Welcome to Silicon Valley Business, a show focused on highlighting the innovation and heart of Silicon Valley. I am your host, Oscar Garcia, and today's show is about innovation. My guests are the founders of LiveHive, a local startup. Welcome, Ramon and Fritz. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for us.
I've been looking forward, and actually just a little bit, we've known each other because we used to work together at a previous startup at MetaLinks, and so I'm really excited to have you guys on the show and be talking about your next startup. So, Ramon, why don't we start with you? Tell us, what is LiveHive? What does it do?
So LiveHive is a company that is developing tools for salespeople. Fritz and I have spent most of our careers in sales, either directly involved with sales or supporting sales. And so what we've seen in the last several years is some pretty significant changes in the way buyers in the business world buy products and the way salespeople that are selling to them need to react to it. And so what we're developing is technology that helps those individual salespeople become more effective in the way they're engaging with their customers.
Okay.
So we can explain more about what we do that in throughout the show here, but basically what we do is we enable the salespeople to share their documents and files with their prospects or their customers, and we give them insights as to how those prospects and customers are engaging with those files and documents. So we all have blind spots, right? And in sales, you can't have blind spots because you lose a deal.
Right.
So in sales, it's really important to understand as much as you can about your buyer. And so what we are developing is technology that allows salespeople to understand as much about the interest that the buyer has in your products and how active they are engaging with your technology or with the product that you're selling.
Okay. Is there certain industries that LiveHive is more appropriate, or is this open to really anyone that's in sales?
So in North America, there are about some 13, 14 million salespeople. About 6 million of those are business-to-business salespeople across all industries, and that's our target. So anybody who is selling products to businesses, they are in a much more competitive environment today than they were, say, 5, 10 years ago. And so they need the extra edge, that advantage that they can either understand what their products are how the products are engaging with their buyer, or how the competition is involved, so they can be ahead of the game and be able to understand how to respond to a buyer and how to close deals faster by knowing when to follow up on a lead, when to follow up on an email, and things like that.
Okay. Now, Fritz, what is the difference between, from a technical standpoint, between LiveHive and Salesforce or other tools that exist?
Yeah, so there's a couple of tools that are common in most companies. One is pretty much everyone has some sort of CRM, a customer relationship management software. And really that's to help the salespeople to keep track of all the deals that they're working on. And that's really an internal management tool. And then you also have a lot of marketing automation, which helps marketing reach out to new prospects. But for the actual salesperson who's trying to engage with individual customers, one-on-one, talk to them, share content, there's really not much there. So we fit kind of in between those two spots. And it's really a helpful tool to help them, as Ramon was saying, share content such as files and documents, find out which ones they're looking at, what they're seeing, who they're sharing it with, and then give them information about that so they know sort of when to reach back out to that customer and what they're interested in.
Okay. Where did the idea of LiveHive originate from?
Well, as I mentioned, Fritz and I have spent most of our career in sales. And so when you look at how people are selling today to businesses, it's so much more competitive and so much more complex than it used to be 5, 10 years ago. For example, there's 3 major changes that we've seen over the last several years. Number one, the buyer is not engaging with the salespeople until much, much later in the sales cycle. So as much as 70% of the sales cycle can go on without the buyer engaging with the salesperson. So how does the salesperson figure out how to talk to, how to communicate, how to provide information to that buyer early in that cycle? That's one big change that has occurred in the last several years. The second one is that many of the companies that are selling to businesses are having to compete with other businesses, with other companies. And one of the competitive advantages that they're trying to implement is to bring the field sales into the inside sales organization. So a lot of the field sales organizations that we used to see many years ago are coming inside. And so if you're an inside sales organization, you have to figure out how do you connect with that individual buyer. You no longer have that face-to-face. Most buyers don't answer the phone calls. So the way to do that is to be able to share files and share pieces of information that are valuable to the buyer and understand how the buyer is engaging with that content. The third thing that has changed in the last several years is that the buyers are spending their time, a lot of their time, in social media. And so the seller, both the company and the individual salespeople have to be in those social networks. So they have to become subject matter experts so that when the buyer wants to investigate a certain product, they know who the expert is in that social network. So those are the three major significant changes that we've seen in the last several years. And we think that LiveHive brings in a combination of technologies that allow individual salespeople and companies to play in those three areas.
Right. You know, Ramon, you talk about the concept of, I believe it's, you call it social selling. Elaborate a little bit more on what you mean. I know you touched a little bit about social media and so forth, but if you can elaborate a little more about.
So the basic concept of social selling is to be able to leverage the connections you have in your social networks to reach buyers. That's the basic concept. In our own vernacular, it's all about being able to take a piece of literature or a white paper or a document and be able to share that in a way that provides information to that potential buyer, not knowing who that potential buyer is, but knowing that someone in your network either it has the interest that you're in the product that you're selling, or knows somebody else who has the interest. And by discovering those connections and those interests, we provide that intelligence to the seller so that they can then connect with the right buyer, and over time build that trust with that buyer and understand that the salesperson is not just selling but providing valuable information to that buyer.
Okay. Fritz, with regards to the innovation in of your product, talk about how if a customer submits an order or maybe a feature, how does that come about? Do you make those changes in the features that you have? Because I know at the Chamber we used early on when the company, your product, but certainly from what it was down to what it is, it's changed quite a bit. And I'm really pleased to see the direction that it's going. But maybe if you can talk about just the innovation and how that takes place.
Sure. So a lot of software companies use something called the agile process, which means that you say you have a schedule that turns very quickly, and as new requests come in, and as you use the product yourself, which we use internally when we're doing our selling, you see what features are important. As you're talking to your prospects and customers, they're telling you the experience they're having. And so you find out what is it that they like, what do they not like, and because the software is all in the cloud, they don't have to install anything. The back end, kind of like Facebook, collects analytics about what features are being used, how they're being used. So we see statistics on which features are the most popular. So based on that, we can tell what area interests people. And from that, we then look and see, okay, what can we do to improve that? And at the end of the day, of course, the most important thing is, what's the problem we're solving that the salesperson has, and how can we help with that? And once you give them a couple of features that help solve the problem, you immediately start getting that kind of feedback that says, hey, if you could do this, it would really help me in this situation. So we're always trying to keep the dialogue with our customers open to get that kind of feedback. And then it just rolls right into the development process. We prioritize it, and the new features come out within weeks.
Right, okay. What are, when you look into the future, what are some of the features that you see implementing?
Yeah, so there's a couple areas. One is we talked about how we capture the metrics around as you're sharing files and documents with people, what are they doing with that? Where are they showing interest? So those kinds of metrics are things like what pages are they looking at? How long are they looking at them? who are they sharing it with? Because as a salesperson, you not only know who you're engaging with, but you've probably talked to or met or heard about other people within the company who are interested in that and who are evaluating it. You find out, are they receiving those documents? So there's all these different analytics. Where are people located? All those things can be collected. So all of that's an area where we're going to keep innovating. And then the next area is, as we take that data and help prioritize which prospects are the most interested, there's an algorithm that we have that helps with that. And I know we have an example. We can show you that if we can put the example up on the screen.
Yes.
That shows the a sample of what happens when the salesperson goes in to look at the looks at the what we call insights, which is the metrics around which people are looking at the documents and how interested are they. And so you get a list of those people, and then you select one, and over on the right side of the screen that you see, there's a score, and some of the future innovation is going to be around that score. How do we calculate that? How accurate is that? And then you can see all the details. And then there's a second example that if you click on one, and we use PowerPoint as an example, somebody's looking at a PowerPoint presentation, and they look at some of the slides, but not all the slides. And what you see on the screen right now is an example of what the salesperson would find out is, oh, everyone's, this person is really interested in slide number 7. And we've gotten direct feedback that they can tell from their own PowerPoint that if someone's interested in slide number 7, that means this product is product number 2 is really interesting to them. And they skipped over these other slides, and so those just aren't all that important. So now the salesperson has some knowledge about what they should be talking about with the prospect.
Wow, this is, I wish they had this when I was doing sales or inside sales. It would have made my job a lot easier. It's amazing, what your LiveHive does and the functionalities, and certainly making the sales process much easier for the sales person. Are there any particular verticals where LiveHive has maybe more use for the product?
So we today, when we sell LiveHive, we obviously focus on specific verticals where people that are selling products in those verticals use technology and generally are very comfortable with technology. And what we look for are certain signs that those salespeople are comfortable using technology and therefore easier to adopt a new tool like LiveHive. And so, for example, we look at are they on LinkedIn? Do they use? Do they post on other social media sites and things like that? And is the company active in promoting their products and their company electronically in their website and other ways? And those companies tend to be more in the technology sector, in the healthcare, certainly in some of the services areas. And those are the areas that we found where our products are being adopted quite well. And but we have probably about a dozen different verticals that we're targeting, but those 3 are probably the ones that are most active today.
Okay. Do you have any examples of a customer that is using your product and some success story?
Sure. We have lots of customers that use our product and they share. And we're eager to learn more about how they use the product. And for example, we have one customer, I won't name any names, but we have one customer that uses our product as an individual salesperson. And one of the things that he does is that he goes to websites to gather information. And one of the features that we have at LiveHive is the ability to capture a live web page. So if you're looking at a competitive web page, or if you're looking at a web page that has specific interests, or data that might be of interest to a specific target audience, what he does is he captures that web page and then shares it with his target viewers, and then he can see how engaged those viewers are, how many times they viewed it, where they viewed it from, and things like that. We have another customer I can share with you that sells very high-end, big technology deals for the semiconductor industry. And those tend to be very long lead sales cycle, sometimes take as many as 12 or 18 months to close. And so to be able to understand who is involved in that sales process is very critical to that salesperson. So when he shares, for example, a PowerPoint or a proposal or a technical piece of information, he is able to understand that individual that is shared that PowerPoint or the technical piece of information also share that information with 10 other people. And by the way, 3 of those people happen to be offshore. So now he knows that this complex sale is even more complex than he thought. It's now not just domestic people involved, but also people offshore. So those are the kinds of information that we're providing to the salespeople that is really, really valuable. And like I said earlier, we all have blind spots, and that's a blind spot that our salespeople, our customers, really, really value about LiveHive.
Interesting. What has been one of the challenges in your startup that you've encountered?
Well, you know, I think of startups as it's a series of experiments, right? And we've all been through startups at least a couple of times in our lives, right? And so one of the challenges is to try to find out as fast as you can where is that value that you can provide to the specific customer that solves a critical need, a critical problem for that customer. And I think that's the kind of the series of experiments that most startups go through. And ultimately you end up with a great product, with a great solution to a critical problem. And what we've seen in our experience is that when you look at the customers that we are selling to, what is the biggest issue that all these companies have? They all are trying to increase sales. They're trying to make what I call the bigger, faster, more type of thing. You want bigger deals. You want to close them faster. You want more of them, right? And so they're constantly trying to figure out how to enable their sales teams to be more effective, and in a much more competitive environment than it was 10, 15 years ago. And so what we did at LiveHive is as you noted earlier, our product has changed significantly over the last year or so, and we really fine-tuned what we do under the covers to provide that insight to the salespeople to solve that critical problem. And I think that's probably the biggest challenges for startups. How do you make sure that you fine-tune all the knobs in your startup and your product to make sure that you are solving a critical problem and that the customer really values that solution?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Fritz, what would you say is the biggest strength that LiveHive has over its competitors?
Well, I think probably number one is the depth of the analytics we provide. So let me give you an example. Let's say if you were buying something and I'm the salesperson, and you've done your research and you reach out to me and say, hey, I'm curious about your product. Can you send me some more information? And I have a couple specific questions. And so you ask me that question on the phone or by email. So I come back and I pick out some piece of some file that has an explanation that I think addresses the need that you have. So I email that off to you. Now I'll know, did you open up the email that had that? I'll know, did you open up the document that had the information I sent? Like we saw in the PowerPoint example, I'll know which particular slides, if that's the document you opened. Did you download it, which means you're probably going to take it with you? Who did you reshare it with? And what are the titles of those people at your company? So I can provide you all of that. And what locations are they in? So like Ramon said, I find out, oh, not only are you looking at it, but you have somebody in another division of your company, and they're looking at that also. Well, that tells me a little bit more about what's going on with the buying process there. So that broad range of capabilities, I think, is our big strength. And then the second one is we mentioned social selling. As a salesperson, you're always going to feel like you need to find some more prospects. That however many you're talking to, you want more. So how do you get those? And as we were saying, people are on social networks. So the ability to take that same piece of content, share that out on, say, LinkedIn, and say, if you're interested in this topic, hey, this might be some material you're interested in. And as a salesperson, you can specify that anybody who wants to see that has to give their name, right? That's commonly like a form on a website.
Right.
Fill out this form, we'll send you a white paper, or we'll send you some information.
Right.
You can specify that you want that, and then you'll get that piece of information about that person, and then you can continue the process, reaching out to them with more files, more information.
Is your model then, is it a monthly subscription? It's a software that you purchase? What?
So we're a SaaS on the cloud service,
Okay.
and is an annual subscription, and it's really easy to sign up, just like most cloud services. Yeah.
Okay. So, and I would imagine that you can either single user or probably buy X number of users then.
Well, that's actually a great question, because one of the things that Fritz didn't talk about, one of the strengths that we have that we built into the technology is not only to support the very straightforward use case where it's a single salesperson, they subscribe to the service and they use LiveHive for their own selling activities. But we also support the very complex model where you have a company that has a complex sales ecosystem where you have direct salespeople, inside salespeople, and a very complex channel. So we can support the entire ecosystem, and at every management level, we can provide the insights for that level of management, so you can see what are my salespeople doing at this level, where are they active in this region, what sort of content is working and producing good results, and what content is not working. So those are really important information insights that we can provide back to management, both for the sales management as well as for marketing. We haven't talked a lot about marketing, but marketing really gets a lot of benefit from LiveHive as well, because they can identify the content that is really going to work for the salespeople, and likewise identify content that doesn't work and take it out of commission.
Right.
The other things that we can do is, for example, for marketing people that are supporting salespeople, we have the concept of libraries. So you can create a library for your common corporate sanctioned content that can be shared with prospects. So all the salespeople have that content immediately available through a single push button. When you update it, you update that library, and the entire sales team has it immediately. So that kind of capability and many more that we have built into the product that allows us to support the single sales use case as well as the very complex use case.
So kind of enterprise sales team, large, like you said, sales team, very powerful. It's very, very, I mean, the more I learn about this, very exciting, because again, having been done sales myself, one, as a salesperson, I do want a tool that is going to make my life a lot easier and help me prospect much more better, therefore either be able to make more phone calls or more intelligent target my prospects. And then from a management standpoint, it's also very important to have tools where you can understand what your sales force is doing, and then you touched upon the marketing as well, folks. So yeah, this is very, very powerful software that you have, solution that you have here. Let's talk about, just kind of go back a little bit about previous startups. Again, I mentioned MetaLinks, but Ramon, you also, there was, I think, maybe another startup. If you can just tell a little bit about your love for startups, Ramon.
So one of the things that I think I've been very fortunate to do is to be able to experience different markets, different technologies, and one of the advantages of being able to live in the Silicon Valley is that you do get exposure to different business models, different technologies, and you have this richness of innovation that goes on all the time in Silicon Valley. So, over a dozen years ago, I retired, and I came back and started doing something totally different that I hadn't done before, and that was purposely done. I wanted to do something that I hadn't done before, to learn a new market, a new industry. And every startup has its own journey, but there's a lot of similarities about startups that as I mentioned earlier, I liken them to a series of experiments until you get the right experiment that produces the right results, and then you scale. And that's kind of the experience that I have taken from startup to startup, but they're all very exciting and very unique. And one of the beauties about being in the Silicon Valley, not only do you have this technology, but you have great people to work with, and I've been very fortunate to work with great teams. Yeah.
I know Fritz here, great person, having worked together at MetaLinks. And but Fritz, what about you? I mean, I'll tell you, one of the things that I see common is young folks starting a startup that have no family, right? It's just themselves, so they can take the risk. But you're married, you have kids, and yet this is your second or third, or I don't know how many startups. And
At least, yes.
yeah. So why the startup world? What interests you about working for a startup?
Well, I think one of the things that's really amazing, that's more interesting now than, say, 10, 15 years ago, is that you can build a company without having to build so much infrastructure yourself. So if you can just get a core team of people who are really good, have experience, know how to create the product. Everyone knows Amazon has built a whole industry essentially around the idea that you can outsource the infrastructure. So the fact that you can just focus on a particular product, solving a particular need for a specific group of people, and then develop that and build a product as good as you could build at a giant company. Because you can essentially just focus on the thing that you're good at. And so I think we can do that better. Most people don't realize how transformative this whole process has been. But it's exciting to be able to just not have to deal with so many different things and just try and write great software, make a great product.
Right. So one of my last questions for both of you, what advice do you have for any startup right now?
Wow, that's a big question. I think the biggest thing that most entrepreneurs have to have is the willingness to face failure and not be afraid of it, to take that risk, and when you find that set of results from that experiment that you conduct every other day or every week in a startup, when those results really don't turn out to be the best that you had hoped for, you take what you can learn from those results and go on to the next one until you get it right. And I think that's what you have to do, is you have to have that ability to take the best and move on to the next experiment. And I mean, building that startup is a series of experiments. So you just have to continue to have the stamina to continue to go.
The internal fortitude.
Exactly, exactly.
Fritz, last word?
Yeah, a couple things that it'll sound a little bit formulaic, but pick a problem that's meaningful, that people really want solved, so that they're willing to pay for it, and that you're working on something that's meaningful and important, and then really understand the customer. Right? I mean, no matter how much you think you know something, when you're talking to a big group of people who are who have that problem that you're trying to solve, you learn something every day. And so you have to keep talking to them, keep learning, and then refining the product, refining the service to make sure it's meeting their needs. Yeah.
Well, great advice. Thank you very much, Ramon and Fritz, and certainly wish you continued success with LiveHive and many more customers. Thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you, Oscar.
Thank you, everyone. Silicon Valley Business, and again, a big thank you to Ramon and Fritz and LiveHive. We'll see you next time.